everyone, so I'm just carrying on talking about the politics of the neurodiversity movement article. So the next part talks about the boundaries of the neurodiversity movement. So in various contexts, conditions such as ADHD, dyslexia, bipolar, intellectual disability, etc. have been asserted to fall under the neurodiversity umbrella. Insofar as neurodiversity has exclusively descriptive implications, the scope is not a difficult question. So in other words, if neurodiversity is just understood as a biological fact, that all brains are different, then clearly that would include every single disorder, every single neurological disorder under the sun. It would include dementia, it would, acquired cases, it would include, by the way, I know someone's going to come down on me now and start saying there are differences between neurodiversity and neurodivergence. Neurodiversity, as I always emphasise, neurodiversity refers to people, the group, the whole of humanity, whereas neurodivergence refers to individuals whose brains break out from that. So, who diverge more than you'd expect in general diversity. So again, neurodiversity refers to group, neurodivergence refers to individual. Neurodiversity activists get very pedantic about that. If you ask me, it's kind of like too pedantic in that respect, because it's like, it's just words at the end of the day here. That seems to be a sort of pet issue for them. But yeah, so technically neurodivergent, so yeah, we're really here talking about neurodivergence, but what actually comes, neurodivergence, I don't like that word, but I'm going to use it in inverted commas. Neurodivergence, the word to describe lots of different disorders. If you're just using it as a descriptive term, then that would certainly include lots of different disorders. You could include epilepsy as neurodivergent. In my language, that's neurodisability, but I'm just using the language of the neurodiversity movement at the moment, okay? It isn't the language I personally like. I'm just using the language that the neurodiversity movement use. So, under the descriptive interpretation, epilepsy, intellectual disability, dementia, OCD, all of these would fall under neurodivergence because the brain, there's something different, divergent, disabled about the brain. But if the word neurodivergent has ideological implications, then it becomes a challenging area for debate. Now, some have framed the neurodiversity movement's ideological commitments as simply an application of the disability rights movement in the realm of mental disability. Under this definition, the neurodiversity's normative implications are the same as those of the broader disability rights movement. So that would include questions such as accessibility and equality of opportunity. Note, equality of opportunity is a very capitalist term, by the way. Just notice the language, equality of opportunity. It's like, opportunity, so there's still going to be some losers, right? It's the idea that, if in a race everyone has the same kind of, the same opportunity to succeed, which in and of itself is kind of controversial. Can you really have the same opportunity to succeed? Can you really have that, in this, is that even possible? But there's still obviously going to be losers, aren't there? It's a very capitalist term, equality of opportunity. It doesn't translate into actual equality, because there's still going to be losers. Anyway, I digress. So the questions of accessibility and equality of the opportunity from this standpoint, taking the broadest possible definition of neurodivergence. The argument here is that scope is a moral necessity because it helps in terms of fighting for non-discrimination and certain rights, for example, the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. However, others have framed the neurodiversity movement as referring to a rejection of a demand for typical cognition and a rejection of the goals of cure or treatment. While autistic repetitive behaviours are generally a source of pleasure, in a context of OCD, they could be a source of distress. Insofar as inclusion within the scope of neurodiversity activism implies a rejection of efforts to target for intervention traits associated with a disability. Insofar as inclusion within the scope of neurodiversity activism implies a rejection of efforts to target for intervention traits associated with a disability, some degree of selection would be appropriate. So this is where some neurodiversity activists would argue that conditions such as OCD, epilepsy, and so on shouldn't be included under the banner of the neurodiversity movement because these conditions cause distress, or they might need therapy or treatment or medication. But that token, ADHD shouldn't also be under it, right? Because people take medication for ADHD. But this is a very strange argument because, as we all know, or we should know, autism in and of itself can cause problems, can cause distress, can sometimes require certain medical interventions in and of itself. So this is a very fallacious idea that somehow autism in its pure form is okay, that it never causes any distress or any problems. Any distress is caused by so-called comorbids. It's like they want to create this kind of fictional fairy tale idea of what so-called pure autism, stripped of any comorbids, is. By making neurodiversity simply application of disability rights in the realm of mental disability, activists lose the ability to refer specifically to movement's most important innovation, which is the rejection of idea that research should target prevention or cure. So this is where the debate gets very contentious, because on a purely descriptive level they should include things such as dementia, epilepsy, OCD, schizophrenia, bipolar. Many of these disorders, by the way, are lifelong and often wax and wane, but they do require some form of medical treatment, like maybe medication, or depending on the disorder in question. Not all of them require medication, but certainly they might be requiring some sort of form of intervention to make life more bearable. They're all neurological disorders. But some people in the neurodiversity movement argue that these shouldn't be included under the umbrella precisely because they might need treatment. If you ask me, this is where the neurodiversity movement gets very elitist and very cult-like. This idea that somehow you can make that autism itself can be advantageous in its pure form. So, basically here we're just talking about those people who are minimally afflicted, which is a very niche group, and that rejecting any other disorder because it's not positive, I suppose. In seeking maximum inclusion, neurodiversity activists may practice a sort of ideological imperialism. So this is the argument against maximum inclusion, because insisting on imparting a worldview into communities with their own incompatible ideological commitments. So that would be like the argument, that including disorders such as OCD, schizophrenia, etc. under the banner, and then saying these disorders shouldn't need to be treated would be a sort of ideological imperialism. And this is where the neurodiversity movement links up with the anti-psychiatry movement, which is very deeply, deeply harmful. So it's kind of, there are issues either way though. Either you exclude disorders such as OCD and ADHD, etc., and make it, and essentially just narrow the scope down to this kind of fictional idea of pure autism, this fairy tale idea of pure autism, maybe dyslexia, and very specific learning difficulties, which can still be very disabling, by the way. So to create this sort of very, very narrow idea. But that in and of itself is problematic because that just highlights the elitist nature of this of what the neurodiversity movement stands for, and it actually doesn't add up either, because as we know, autism in and of itself in its pure form can be deeply disabling as well. It isn't always a positive thing on its own, and people might well want treatments, and should we take their right away to have treatment? Someone wants treatment, that's their right, isn't it? We shouldn't be taking it away from them. That's a form of imperialism. Of course, there are many persons with mental illness who do seek to apply neurodivergence to their own condition. Dwyer notes and rejects arguments for defining neurodiversity to include those conditions that emerge naturally. I think this is the place I'm going to stop actually, because I'm aware this video is probably going to run out of me and we're almost at the end, but I just want to tie it up next time. So I'm going to stop now And let me know what you think about what I've said so far, and thank you for watching.